Everyone, I don't know how to follow that. Well, thanks Mike and James for inviting me to be here, and thanks to Malvern Books for hosting. Drove down I-35 today from Oklahoma. It's a straight shot. It's not an exciting drive, but it's not too long. It's not too bad. Okay, so I read and read all the way down here, trying to find something that would fit in my time constraints, and found nothing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read about 15 minutes into one of these stories, leave you with a tantalizing cliffhanger. And are you Brad? Hey, Brad. And leave you with a web address where you can go read the rest of it. That's all I know to do, really. So, okay. So this is published in Guernica, and I don't know. I guess I don't need to set it up. Wounding readiness. 2 days after a private first class went AWOL from Fort Sill, Oklahoma, Hannah and Iris were in the nearby Wichita Mountain Wildlife Refuge on the low western slope of a mountain named after a general. A waterfall tumbled over broad limestone rocks, creating a pool at the bottom in a little meadow surrounded on all sides by boulders. A natural hideout. It had all sorts of outlaw legends attached to it. Jesse James, Belle Starr. People hung out there. High school kids partied. The spot was well known but still secluded, a good place to sell drugs, which was why Hannah and Iris had come, plastic baggies crammed into the pockets of their cargo pants. They were disappointed to find only 2 couples there, high school kids, skinny dipping on a school day. At the edge of the water, Iris sold them a dime bag, accepting a collection of wet and wadded cash from a topless girl in cutoffs. The teenagers were talking about the AWOL GI. What's he going to do with the guns? That's what I want to know. The speaker was a heavy blonde girl, propped on one elbow, rolling a joint with her free hand. That was the question that had everybody in Fort Sill and Lawton talking. Hannah and Iris had heard their customers at Chili's discuss little else in the 2 days since the GI took off. The blonde girl's freckle-chested boyfriend said, "GIs go AWOL sometimes. I probably would. What's the big deal?" "The weapons," Iris said. "The weapons are the big deal." The last notable AWOL case had been a few years earlier, when Hannah and Iris were still in high school, before Hannah took her track scholarship to the University of Connecticut and got kicked out for selling good old Oklahoma homegrown to her classmates. That AWOL GI had been found hanging from a light fixture at the Ranch Motel on Cache Road. He had been to Iraq a whole bunch. That was the story. This time, however, PFC Larry Pearson, a 21-year-old Afghanistan veteran from Vermilion, South Dakota, had made off with 4 M16A2s, 6 30-round magazines of ammo, and 2 M67 grenades. "Didn't you go to Eisenhower?" one of the guys asked Hannah. He was floating on his back near the froth where the waterfall hit the surface of the water, his pale, soft penis breaking the surface every few seconds. "I remember you. You ran track. You were great, man. I thought you had a full ride somewhere back east. Can't you run anymore?" "She can run," Iris said. She was angry at them for making Hannah feel bad, angrier still that they didn't seem to remember Iris herself at all. "You bet she can. How about a race?" Hannah smiled. That was Iris, Semper Fi. Iris's dad was a Marine who lost a leg breaching an enemy minefield on the push into Kuwait in '91. He had raised Iris on a steady diet of Van Halen, the Terminator movies, and sermons about loyalty. One phrase he used so often it had become a joke between Iris and Hannah: Semper Fi means never leaving your friend in the hellhole. Hannah didn't want to race, but she bristled at the thought that these kids could think she was a has-been at 21, like she could lose all her speed in the 3 years since high school. Her daily runs were the only good thing in her life at the moment, the only thing she was doing right. "How about it?" She addressed his penis. His girlfriend, the topless one in the wet cutoffs, looked up from her phone, but the kids were stoned and lethargic. The boy in the pool waved off Hannah's suggestion. Iris patted Hannah on the back. "Come on," she said. "Screw them." They headed up the mountain to check on a small patch of Iris's pot plants. The landscape in the Wichita Mountain Range was perfect for hiding small dope crops. Big, loose boulders with patches of grass occurring in and among the stones, all the way to the mountaintops. While Hannah was away at college, Iris had broken sod on a few of these small meadows, trusting that no one would look for marijuana crops in a national wildlife refuge. And if anyone discovered her little gardens, there would be no way to trace them to her. Hannah thought the whole enterprise was reckless, but still she followed Iris between the rocks, climbing up from the swimming hole, then southward and down. The pot patch was close to the road, hidden hidden from drivers by a wall of lichen-covered stones the size of VW bugs, which Iris had marked with white chalk like a Cold War spy indicating a drop box. Coming up on the crop from behind, they trudged through a nearly dry creek bed by a short ridge with a shallow cave in it. As they passed, Hannah glanced inside the cave and saw 4 wooden cases sitting side by side. They were each about 1.5 feet deep and wide, painted khaki with coarse rope handles and U.S. Army stenciled across their sides. Iris, Hannah said, look. Iris stopped and looked where Hannah was pointing. Whoa, Army stuff. With all things military, Iris took on an air of authority around Hannah, who was a townie, a true civilian, whose great-grandparents had settled in the 1901 land run, and whose parents owned a chain of local convenience stores. These are equipment cases, Iris said, wishing she could think of something more official sounding, more technical. They stood in front of the cave looking at the crates for a minute before Iris said, fuck it. She dragged one out by its side handle, letting it slide and settle at the edge of the creek bed. God, it's heavy. Then she began kicking at it, aiming her boot heel at the lock. Hannah grimaced. You shouldn't do that. Iris pointed, indicating the pot plants just ahead of them. There are a lot of things I shouldn't do. Don't you wonder what's inside? She gave another hard kick with her boot heel, and a wood plank splintered. 2 more kicks and the lid was free. As the crate fell open, Iris took a second to absorb what she was seeing. Slick paper, flesh, orifices. Oh, she said, it's porn. Then why is it so heavy? She knelt before the chest and emptied the porn by handfuls, dropping the magazines on the rocks. Look, she said, turning the case on its side for Hannah to see. From the outside, the case looked 18 inches deep, but only half that from the inside. She could barely lift it, and when she tipped it over, she heard heavy items sliding inside. Hannah, they have false bottoms. She slammed the heel of her boot into the corner of the chest until a space opened up between its wall and its floor, which the girls pried at until they tore away the false bottoms, revealing an M16A2 rifle, disassembled and nestled in the bottom of the case. Black plastic magazines, which looked like the disassembled road sections of a kid's racetrack, nestled together in one corner. Hannah lifted the sight mechanism to her eye, looking around with it like a pirate sighting land. She struggled for Iris's apparent nonchalance, but she had never seen a gun except her grandfather's hunting rifle. This black plastic stuff was something different, cold and dark like the expression in the eyes of a snake. She thought of all the school shootings, all the crazy shit going on. These kinds of weapons weren't for shooting quail. These have to be what that AWOL GI stole a few days ago, right? Must be, Iris agreed. She opened another crate and felt an ominous crunch of metal under her heel. Grenades were strapped to the top of this case, and she had bent the safety clip on one of them as she kicked the case open. When she realized what she had done, her thoughts became sticky as stuck gears while her body sped up. She jumped across the creek bed. She crouched behind a boulder, yelling for Hannah to follow. Her dad had told her that a grenade goes off in 5 seconds once it's triggered. 5 seconds, and it has a wounding radius of 50 feet. The boulder she hid behind wasn't quite 50 feet away, but it was a boulder. When she rounded it, Hannah was already there, sticking her landing and pulling Iris down. Fucking roadrunner, Iris said, clutching her friend. They gripped each other's biceps, their shoulders hunched together. It didn't occur to either of them that when the grenade went off, it would trigger the other ordnance close to it. But there was no explosion. They stood up. Holy crap, Hannah said. Holy crap. Her heart was fluttering so fast it made her voice vibrate. Let's get out of here. I just want to see what's in the others, Iris said. She crossed the creek bed again, heading back to the crates. You know what's in them. Forget about it. Iris was pulling a 3rd crate out of the cave when they heard a voice. I said, stop it. A shirtless guy, wiry and badly sunburned with aviator shades on, wearing the belted bottoms of a set of desert camo BDUs, slid down the sloping side of a boulder, bracing with the soles of his Nikes, and landed a few feet from them. He looked at the cases at their feet and at Hannah and Iris. What are you doing? He said. Cut it out. He pointed a pistol at them. The moment thickened around Hannah like syrup. She was stuck in an endless moment. If she hadn't been caught selling Iris's pot on campus, she would be sitting right now in the student union, drinking fancy coffee and studying organic chem or therapeutic modalities. She was majoring in sports medicine. She would be close to graduating, close to telling Iris she was done selling dope for good, close to free. Now she was as close to free as she'd ever been. Hey, Iris said. She had gone numb at the sight of the gun. She surprised herself by speaking. These your magazines? Both kinds of magazines, that is. She opened up a wide smile on autopilot, working to contain the situation. Get it? Both kinds of magazines? All of it's mine, the soldier said, pushing his shades up on his forehead. He had pale green eyes and would have been good-looking if not for a weak chin, the kind that made him look like a drawing that someone had lost interest in before finishing the face. Still, if you just looked at the top half, he was pretty hot. He had gotten a good look at Hannah now and had that dazzled expression Iris had seen so many times before. "What's your name?" he asked Hannah. Anne. Her name is Hannah, Iris said. She stuck out her hand. "I'm Iris, but you can call me chopped liver." "I'm Larry." He lowered the gun and took Iris's hand. He moved slowly like a lizard in the morning before the sun has warmed its blood. "Are you staying out here?" Iris asked. "What are you going to do with these guns?" Hannah stared at Iris. Anything demanding subtlety, Iris just rolled right over. Like the way Iris would crash her dates, riding in the back seat, growing more and more self-amused as she humiliated Hannah. But this time, Iris's blunt methods were working. The GI looked like he was glad she had asked. He said, "I have friends up north who would really like to have them." "What kind of friends?" Iris asked. "Patriots," he said. "Like militia types? Do you have any idea what's really going on in this country?" Larry stepped back and waved the pistol around. No, but I'd like to," Iris said quickly. She didn't exactly have a plan, but she knew that the ordinance was worth money and that this guy needed help. What you call an opportunity. Hannah turned and waved. "I'll see you," she said. "Best of luck. Come on, Iris." "Come with us," Iris said, grinning at the GI. "Wouldn't you like to take a shower?" "Iris," snapped Hannah, "let's just go." Iris reached out and rubbed Hannah's back, trying to calm her down. She wasn't very savvy, Hannah wasn't. "I bet you're hungry," she said to Larry. His eyes darted back and forth over the girls and the weapons. "But the stuff," he said. "Let's put it back in the cave," Iris said. "It's not going anywhere." He looked them both up and down. Chopped liver, Iris, wasn't so bad. Bad skin, but great legs. If she weren't with such a pretty one, she'd look okay herself. "Is that your weed crop over yonder?" "Guilty," Iris said. "Could we smoke a bowl?" "Oh, you bet," Iris said. "That would be easy." He jammed the gun into the waistband of his camos. Really fucking awesome. And I will stop there. It goes on for like 20 more pages, but it's up at Guernica.